Fame isn't always a dream. For some, it's a slow unraveling. The stars you're about to meet aren't running from success. They're escaping its shadow. They are the ones who discovered too late that being adored by millions can feel like living under a microscope. These are stories of actors, musicians, and icons, people who simply couldn't stand what fame turned them into. From Sia hiding behind her wigs to Daniel Day-Lewis vanishing into the Irish countryside, from Marilyn Monroe's tragic loneliness to Britney Spears' desperate cry for freedom, each found their own way to disappear. The spotlight that once promised immortality became the very thing that consumed them. This isn't a story about rebellion or arrogance. It's a confession from those who learned that fame doesn't make you whole. It only magnifies the cracks. In Hollywood's brightest light, the human heart burns fastest. Zach Galifianakis. When The Hangover exploded in 2009, Zach Galifianakis became an overnight sensation. The film grossed over $460 million worldwide, and suddenly, the man once performing in smoky clubs was headlining blockbuster sequels. Then came Between Two Ferns, a parody talk show that dismantled celebrity vanity through awkward interviews and biting satire. The series earned him Emmy Awards and global acclaim, yet behind the scenes, Galifianakis was growing increasingly uncomfortable with what his success represented. In a 2014 press conference for Birdman, he didn't hide his feelings. Being a celebrity is It's dumb, and I'm not interested in it. He went on to describe Hollywood as gross for how it constantly celebrates itself. The root of his disdain came from how fame warped human behavior. Fans expected access to his personal life. Tabloids speculated about his relationships. Publicists pushed him toward visibility he never wanted. What the world called success, he saw as exposure, a loss of privacy, authenticity, and peace. So Galifianakis began to disappear. He stopped doing most interviews and red carpet appearances, moved his family out of Los Angeles, and limited his presence in the public eye. He bought a farm in North Carolina where he raises his children away from the flashbulbs. The irony couldn't be clearer. The man who became rich and adored for mocking celebrity culture turned that mockery into a personal philosophy. He didn't quit art, he quit attention. He proved that it's possible to be brilliant, successful, and invisible all at once. Zach Galifianakis' story isn't just about rejecting fame, it's about reclaiming sanity. In a city built on illusion, he chose authenticity. In doing so, he became Hollywood's rarest creature, a man who made the world laugh, then vanished before it could laugh at him. Sia. Before she was a global phenomenon, Sia Furler was a behind-the-scenes genius. She wrote songs for some of the biggest artists in the world. Diamonds for Rihanna, Pretty Hurts for Beyoncé, Let Me Love You for Nayo. But when she released Chandelier in 2014, her powerful voice and haunting lyrics catapulted her into international fame. The video racked up billions of views, and Sia went from being the songwriter behind the curtain to the woman everyone wanted to see. That's when things started to unravel. In interviews, Sia explained that she had already struggled with addiction, depression, and anxiety long before Chandelier made her a household name. Fame, she said, exacerbated every insecurity I had. It wasn't the music industry itself that broke her down. It was the loss of control. Fans expected to know everything about her. Tabloids hunted for photos. Strangers dissected her body and her past. She once admitted that fame made her feel terrified and unsafe, especially after online critics targeted her appearance and mental health. The constant scrutiny pushed her toward relapse, and she realized she needed to disappear to survive. Her solution was as radical as it was brilliant. she hid her face. When asked why she performed with wigs that completely covered her identity, she said simply, "I just want to go to Target and buy a hose if I want to." In private, Sia retreated further from Hollywood, avoiding red carpets and paparazzi while focusing on songwriting and directing. The irony, of course, is that her anonymity made her even more famous. By refusing to show her face, she created one of the most recognizable images in modern pop culture. Sia's story isn't about hiding. It's about reclaiming control in an industry that takes it away. For her, fame was never freedom. It was something to survive. Marilyn Monroe. By the early 1960s, Marilyn Monroe was more than a movie star. She was the most famous woman on Earth. Born Norma Jean Mortensen in 1926, she rose from an unstable childhood in foster care to embody Hollywood's golden dream. Films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, 1953, The 7-Year Itch, 1955, and Some Like It Hot, 1959, turned her into a box office phenomenon and cemented her as the ultimate sex symbol of the 20th century. Her face was everywhere: magazines, billboards, and soldiers' locker walls. She wasn't just admired, she was adored, consumed, and possessed by the public imagination. Studio executives at 20th Century Fox shaped Monroe into the blonde bombshell, a fantasy she could never escape. While the world saw seduction, she saw confinement. Monroe longed to be taken seriously as an actress, not as a commodity. Monroe once said it was a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul. In 1955, she defied the studio system by founding her own company, Marilyn Monroe Productions, a radical move for a woman in Hollywood at the time. The more she fought for control, the more the press obsessed over her marriages, her mental health, and her private struggles. Behind the camera flashes was a life unraveling. Friends recalled her loneliness, her dependence on sleeping pills, and her battles with depression. Fame promised love and power, but instead brought isolation and exhaustion. On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Los Angeles home at just 36 years old. The world mourned a legend, but her death exposed the dark truth behind the Hollywood dream, that the spotlight can both elevate and destroy. Marilyn Monroe remains the most enduring paradox of fame. A woman who symbolized desire, yet died searching for understanding. She wasn't just the world's sex symbol, she was its cautionary tale. Emma Watson. Emma Watson was only 11 years old when she became Hermione Granger in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, 2001. The franchise went on to gross over $7 billion worldwide, transforming her from an ordinary schoolgirl into one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. But fame came too early, and too intensely. For more than a decade, she couldn't walk down a street, attend a class, or meet friends without cameras flashing. What millions saw as a fairy tale childhood, she later described as a form of trauma. The root of her fear was loss of control. Everywhere she went, someone wanted a photo. Paparazzi waited outside her home and classrooms. Fans dissected her clothes, her relationships, even her friendships. If someone takes a photograph of me and posts it, within 2 seconds they've created a marker of exactly where I am within 10 meters, she said. So she fought back in her own quiet way. Watson limited interviews, avoided social media for long periods, and refused to be photographed with fans unless the setting felt safe. Instead of chasing red carpets, she chose higher education, enrolling at Brown University, to rebuild her life away from the spotlight. Later, she reappeared on her own terms, as an actress by choice and as a feminist activist by conviction. The girl who became famous for playing the smartest witch of her age turned that same intelligence toward protecting her sanity. Emma Watson's story proves that not all fairy tales end with applause. Some end with the courage to walk away from the stage. Daniel Day-Lewis. Daniel Day-Lewis isn't just an actor. He's often described as the greatest of his generation. From My Left Foot, 1989, to There Will Be Blood, 2007, and Lincoln, 2012, he built a career on total transformation. Every performance was immersion, every role a life lived rather than played. With 3 Academy Awards for Best Actor, a record no other man has achieved, he reached the summit of cinematic artistry. Yet, as his fame soared, his desire to stay in the public eye plummeted. Unlike most Hollywood icons, Day-Lewis has always rejected celebrity culture. In rare interviews, he admitted he found the attention oppressive and unreal. He once described his life as a lifelong study in evasion, not from art, but from fame itself. Acting for him was sacred work, but celebrities turned that work into spectacle. Fans expected appearances, tabloids speculated on his private life, and studios demanded faster returns. The noise of fame clashed with his pursuit of quiet truth. In the late 1990s, Day-Lewis walked away from acting, moving to Florence to apprentice as a shoemaker under master artisan Stefano Bamer. When he returned with Gangs of New York, 2002, it was only because the role called him back. Even after Lincoln won him his 3rd Oscar, he vanished again, retreating to the Irish countryside. In 2017, he officially announced his retirement, reaffirming that art without peace held no meaning for him. Daniel Day-Lewis's story reminds us that greatness doesn't always demand visibility. Sometimes the truest artist is the one who walks away when the applause gets too loud. Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf's story doesn't follow the Hollywood script. He didn't rise, fall, and quietly fade away. He exploded. Discovered as a child actor on Disney Channel's Even Stevens, he seemed destined for stardom. By his early 20s, he was the face of blockbusters like Transformers and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. To studios, he was a goldmine. To audiences, the reckless energy that made him brilliant on screen also made him unpredictable. But to Shia himself, fame was a slow and relentless cage. He later confessed in an interview that being a celebrity felt like being enslaved, and that constant exposure robbed him of his individuality. Fans wanted every piece of him, his words, his breakdowns, his recovery. Every mistake became a meme, every headline became a trial. So LaBeouf fought back the only way he knew, through chaos. In 2014, after plagiarism accusations, he appeared at the Berlin Film Festival with a paper bag over his head that read, "I am not famous anymore." LaBeouf later spoke openly about his mental health struggles and PTSD, admitting that fame magnified every wound he'd tried to hide. Today, Shia LaBeouf remains one of Hollywood's most complicated figures. Not a fallen star, but a mirror showing what happens when success burns too hot. Robert Pattinson. When Twilight hit theaters in 2008, it turned Robert Pattinson into one of the most recognizable faces on Earth. The 5-film saga grossed over $3.3 billion worldwide, cementing him as a global heartthrob. Yet that same fame became the thing he despised most. The actor, who once played a glittering vampire adored by millions, later admitted that fame had destroyed any sense of a normal life. Paparazzi followed him relentlessly. He couldn't step outside without cameras flashing, fans screaming, or tabloids inventing stories about his personal life. In interviews, He confessed that the obsession felt isolating, that people saw him as a character, not a person. "When you become famous," he said, "people don't realize how lonely you are." The cost of global adoration was solitude. He coped by vanishing. Pattinson avoided social media entirely for over a decade, rarely gave interviews, and chose to live quietly between London and Los Angeles. He began taking small, eccentric indie roles: Good Time, The Lighthouse, High Life, each a deliberate step away from mainstream expectations. He even joked that he'd prefer living in the woods somewhere, away from all of this. Robert Pattinson's story isn't about rejecting success, it's about surviving it. For a man once trapped in the glow of teenage hysteria, peace now means anonymity. He remains proof that sometimes the brightest spotlight can cast the darkest shadow. Britney Spears. When Britney Spears released Baby One More Time in 1998, she became the face of an entire generation. The song topped charts in more countries, sold over 10 million copies, and made her one of the youngest global icons in music history. By the early 2000s, her fame had reached an intensity that few humans could survive. The world didn't just watch Britney, it consumed her. Paparazzi followed her everywhere, from gas stations to grocery stores, from airports to her own home. In a 2008 MTV documentary, she tearfully admitted, "I'm sad." Every failed relationship, every mistake, every haircut became tabloid entertainment. By 2007, after years of non-stop touring and media harassment, Spears experienced one of the most public breakdowns in pop culture history. The image of her shaving her head now reads like a symbol of rebellion against dehumanization. The following year, a Los Angeles court placed her under a conservatorship that would last 13 years, giving her father legal control over her finances and personal life. In court testimony from 2021, she described feeling like a prisoner in her own career, saying, "I just want my life back." She spoke of being forced to perform, medicated against her will, and constantly watched by her own team. Fame for Britney became surveillance, a gilded cage disguised as success. The same spotlight that made her a legend also became the instrument of her suffering. Yet her eventual freedom, the Free Britney movement, and the end of her conservatorship in November 2021 showed something extraordinary. Even after 2 decades of public pain, she still had the courage to speak, to fight, and to live. Britney Spears doesn't just symbolize the dark side of fame, she exposes it. Her story isn't about a pop star losing control. It's about a woman learning to take her life back from the machine that sold it. Dave Chappelle. In 2003, Chappelle's show exploded on Comedy Central, redefining what sketch comedy could be. Then, at the height of his success, Chappelle did something almost unthinkable. He vanished. In 2005, he walked away from a $50 million contract, boarded a plane to South Africa, and disappeared from Hollywood. To outsiders, it looked like madness. But Chappelle later explained the truth in multiple interviews that fame had become a horrifying concept when it's aimed at you. He said that being famous meant living in a funhouse mirror. Everything was distorted, and everyone wanted a piece of you. Instead of letting it consume him, he escaped it. Chappelle found refuge in small-town Ohio, where he still lives with his wife and children. His days are quiet. His neighbors treat him like a friend, not a celebrity. When he finally returned to comedy years later, his humor was sharper, wiser, and infused with hard-earned perspective. His disappearance became legend, and his refusal to sell out turned him into a symbol of creative integrity. Dave Chappelle didn't just hate the spotlight. He redefined what it means to live without it. Daniel Radcliffe. When Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone premiered in 2001, Daniel Radcliffe was only 12 years old. A shy London boy suddenly transformed into the face of a global phenomenon. While it made him one of the richest young actors in history, it also trapped him inside a world he could never escape. Radcliffe has spoken openly about how fame disrupted his adolescence. As the pressures of celebrity life mounted, Radcliffe turned to alcohol as a form of escape. Nights out often ended in self-loathing because he knew that photographers were waiting. What makes Radcliffe remarkable is how he fought to redefine himself. Instead of chasing superstardom, he pursued offbeat and often unsettling projects, playing a demon in Horns, a corpse in Swiss Army Man, and a darkly comic villain in Guns Akimbo. Today, Daniel Radcliffe lives a relatively private life in New York, choosing stage work and indie films over blockbusters. Fame never broke him, but it forced him to grow up faster than anyone should. He didn't survive Voldemort, he survived something harder: the endless expectations of the real world. Fame built their empires, but it also broke their peace. What began as applause turned into obsession, cameras, and the quiet loss of self. These weren't just stars chasing the spotlight, they were people running from it. Each story you've seen today proves that some of the brightest names in Hollywood are, in truth, celebrities who can't stand being famous. From the comedians who vanished into silence to the pop idols who fought for freedom, their journeys reveal the hidden price of being adored by millions. Fame may open every door, but it can also lock you inside. So, would you trade your life for a moment of glory? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and tap the notification bell for more untold stories behind the fame.